Okay. Everybody should have had a chance at this point to see that we're recording, and so we will stop. We will start now. And again, as Michael Sawicki's are coming in, hopefully they'll be able to rename themselves. Okay. And we are on speaker view. Okay. And Lorraine, I'm going to ask you to mute yourself as well.
But I was quiet.
That's okay. 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 I'm Barbara Klein from the League of Women Voters, Rogue Valley. I am the action chair, and I'm also the portfolio lead for election methods for LWV Oregon. You know, many league events, hold on just a second. There we go. Okay. Many league events are strictly educational. They're voter service. This is a hybrid. It's some education and info, but also advocacy. The league never supports or opposes parties or people running for office. We can support policies or measures if we've jumped through appropriate hoops. And those hoops involve a study, which is often 2 years long, background reports, consensus meetings of members, and establishing a position. When we have a position, we can then support or oppose policies and measures. That's the situation for all of the electoral reforms that we're covering at this gathering right now. We support them all. Still, all that being said, we have a phrase in the league that we often use: think before you ink. And even if we support a measure, we want voters to understand what they're signing and then ultimately what they're voting on. So the speakers tonight may mention league positions, but the league language can be found on our state website, LWVOR.org, or for the Jackson County measures, LWVRV.org. And those links will be in the chat. Now that is not the campaign language, but our positions, and it serves as our explanation of why we are supportive of these measures. And actually the links for the campaigns will be in there as well. And a little bit of housekeeping, actually a little more than this for housekeeping. We are recording the meeting, as you all know. Please mute unless you are speaking. It really does help with the speaker's view to make sure the speaker is showing. And we are opening chat for comments or questions, but we do ask so that we can more easily monitor the questions. If it is a question you're asking and not a comment, put the word question or question marks before it. And that way we will know what's going on and know if you actually have a question. So the format tonight is that each measure will have approximately 20 minutes for an overview and questions. And we'll also have information about how you can get involved. We will stop briefly before the Jackson County campaign information to allow time for further questions about the previous measures or from the previous speakers. After that, we will invite those that might be from other parts of the state to stay with us or sign off. It's your choice. And I want to thank Bonnie Johnson for helping monitoring chat. And thanks to Jane Kenworthy, who will be quietly and gently reminding us to stay on time. So we really appreciate both of them. To save time and confusion, each speaker will introduce themselves before each segment. However, I will also post their bios in the chat. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dan and Honest Elections. So go for it, Dan.
think the sequence is to unmute yourself and then share the screen. Otherwise, it's difficult to unmute yourself. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And can you see the screen all right?
Yes, perfect.
Right. Well, I'm a volunteer with Honest Elections Oregon. This is the website, honestelections.com. And I'm here to talk mainly about Initiative Petition 9 for 2024. We're currently collecting signatures on that. They're due next July, early July of 2024. And the League of Women Voters of Oregon has endorsed the measure, and Becky Gladstone is one of the chief petitioners. So just a little bit of background about why we need something like this. Let's see if there's how this works. Various studies of campaign finance systems around the country have ranked Oregon very close to the bottom or worst, having the worst systems for means to fight corruption in government. At the end of 2015, the State Integrity Investigation of the Center for Public Integrity and others gave Oregon an F in political financing. They then ranked the states in order of which ones had the best campaign finance systems. And Oregon came in 49th. We did beat Mississippi, but I don't think that's much of a bragging point. Other studies since then have confirmed this. In 2022, the Coalition for Integrity composed a campaign finance index, and it ranked, you'll see Washington #1, California #2, and Oregon #44. So we're beat a few more states in 2022. The result of Oregon's system, and one major feature of it is no limits on campaign contributions at all, is that the amount spent on governor races by the candidates has increased from about $2 million in 1998 to $82 million in the year 2022. So we're talking about very big money in Oregon elections. The Oregonian a while back reported that Oregon elections are the most expensive per capita in the United States, with the possible exception of New Jersey. The governor elections are actually dominated by very large contributions. These are the largest contributors to the Betsy Johnson campaign from last year. Phil Knight of Nike contributed almost $4 million to Betsy Johnson by himself. The rest of her contributions came mainly from companies involved in the timber industry, although also Columbia Sportswear, Lithia Motors, and a tugboat or barge company. But very large contributions from individuals, but particularly from large corporations. The Republican, Christine Drazan, had a somewhat similar set of contributors. Again, lots of wood products and forest products, construction, etc., but also some financial planning companies and individuals. And Phil Knight here again, $1 million to Christine Drazan. But you can see that the overwhelmingly largest contribution came from the Republican Governors Association. This is what's called a dark money group. They don't disclose their donors. In past years, they had to, but the law and various Supreme Court doctrines have changed. So they don't disclose their donors. In past years, their donors were almost entirely very large corporations, including tobacco companies, drug companies, oil companies, and that's about it. So that's where she was receiving the vast sum of her money. Now, the Democrats aren't leaving the parade behind. Here we have the largest donors to the Tina Kotek campaign. Most of these are labor unions, some of them software developers, League of Conservation Voters. But the largest contributor by far, almost $5 million, was the Democratic Governors Association, which is also a dark money group, which also in past years has disclosed its funders and receives the vast majority of its funds from large corporations, including tobacco companies, oil companies, and Wall Street financiers and hedge fund operators. So that's who are financing Oregon's governor elections last year. Now, many states would not allow anything near these kinds of contributions. These are the limits on governor elections in various states. You'll see that Colorado is $575 per person or entity. Washington is $2,400 per person or entity. they don't have the large contributions that Oregon has. The situation for the Oregon legislature is somewhat similar, less extreme. All candidates for the Oregon legislature in 1996 spent about $3 million together, and in 2002 spent about $43 million together. And once again, the amounts are increasing rather rapidly. This gives you the average spending by the top 10 candidates in both in the Oregon Senate and then in the Oregon House for each of the last 6 election cycles. In the Oregon Senate, the average spent by the top 10 spending candidates last year was over $1.5 million. And that's to earn a seat in the Senate with as few as 30,000 or even fewer votes. So that becomes the most expensive campaigns per capita for the legislature in the United States. In the Oregon legislature, 2022 saw a slight softening of the amount that had gone up to $925,000 for the top 10 and each of the top 10. And again, you can win an Oregon legislative seat in the House for as few as 15,000 votes. So these races are actually even more expensive than in the Senate. Contribution limits in various states on legislators are here. Colorado 200, Montana 170. So the kind of contributions that we have in Oregon, it's typical for a candidate for the Senate or House to receive a $50,000 or greater contribution from an individual, or more likely a corporation. The many states limit contributions to legislative campaigns to $1,000 per person. That includes Washington. The actual limit in Washington is now $2,400 because they have an inflation adjustment clause in the law that they passed several years ago. In Oregon, we have been gradually adopting campaign finance reforms, including contribution limits. In 2016, the voters of Multnomah County, by an 89% yes vote, amended the charter to prohibit contributions by corporations and other entities, limiting individuals or PACs to contributing only $500 to a candidate, allowing small donor committees, which are committees which can only receive contributions from individuals and only in amounts of $100 or less, to make larger contributions, quite a bit larger contributions, and requiring that the 5 largest true original sources of funds be prominently disclosed on political advertisements. That's been in effect since 2017. Honest Elections did a similar measure in Portland in 2018. It received an 87% yes vote. It does basically the same thing as the Multnomah County measure. The Multnomah County measure, by the way, was then upheld against several challenges to its constitutionality by the Oregon Supreme Court in 2020, and that decision also applies then to the 2018 Portland City Charter Amendment. But these are the only limits on contributions and the only true disclosure requirements that exist in Oregon at this point. So we have Initiative Petition 9 on the streets. These are the limits that would impose on candidates for all state offices in Oregon. It's a $2,000 an individual, no contributions by for-profit corporations or any entity for that matter. Individuals can contribute $2,000 to a candidate for a statewide office, $1,000 to a candidate for any other office, $500 to a candidate for local government office, $1,000 to a multi-candidate political committee, which then can use its funds to contribute to candidates, or $10,000 to an official political party. We made the political party number larger because the U.S. Supreme Court in 2007 struck down all of the limits in Vermont, primarily because it had too low a limit on contributions to political parties, like $100. And the court said that political parties are kind of like grassroots organizations, so you have to make an accommodation for them. Petition 9 also puts limits on what multi-candidate committee political action committees can contribute, basically the same amounts that an individual can contribute. So it means that the existence of political committees is not a big loophole in order to evade the limits on individuals. The petition also allows the creation of small donor committees funded only by contributions of $250 per year or less, and only from individuals. And these committees can contribute a lot more to candidates for statewide office, 20,000, or other offices, 10,000, or local government, 5,000. And membership organizations, which have been in existence for at least 18 months and meet some other pretty easily met qualifications, may contribute $10,000 to any candidate plus $10,000 of in-kind personal services. So those are the contribution limits. We also require large campaign spenders and contributors of $10,000 or more to reveal the true original sources of funds. They don't under current Oregon law. Under current Oregon law, the only thing a campaign ever has to disclose is the last person or entity who touched the money before they gave it to the campaign. It doesn't really matter where the money came from. So that makes disclosure very easily to evade. All you need to do is form a nonprofit organization, funnel the money to the nonprofit organization, then give it to the campaign. And the only thing the campaign ever has to disclose is the name of the nonprofit organization. The Good Things for Oregon, foundation or whatever. So Oregon has a very easily evaded disclosure requirement now. Initiative Petition 9 also, I'm sorry, when I click anything, it goes to the next slide. I have to stop doing that. Initiative Petition 9 also requires all campaigns, including dark money groups who are spending on independent expenditures, to name their 4 largest sources of the original sources of funding in all of their advertisements, and also requires faster disclosure of large contributions. Anything 10,000 or above has to be disclosed in 7 days. Under current law, it can take as long as 42 days to disclose those contributions. And again, under current law, you only disclose the last person who touched it, not where it actually came from. Initiative Petition 9 has other interesting provisions. It removes the exception in Oregon bribery laws for bribery using campaign contributions. Oregon has a unique law that's on criminal bribery by public officials. It says that even if you make a deal with the public official, I will give you something of pecuniary value in exchange for a public official act. In every state except Oregon, that's illegal. But it's legal in Oregon as long as what you give to the politician is a campaign contribution. Oregon has a specific exemption in its bribery laws for campaign contributions. No other state has that. We also limit candidates' carryover of funds from one election to another, so they can't, sorry, I clicked it again. So they can't amass war chests of money that discourage other candidates. It's not fair for candidates to carry over thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars from one campaign to the next, particularly if they're running for a different office. We require more campaign finance information in printed and online voters pamphlets, including that the online voters pamphlet include updated campaign finance information for the candidate. We also eliminate fees for small funded candidates so they can have pages in the voters pamphlet without paying $3,000. We increase the penalties for campaign finance violations, currently limited to 10% of whatever the violation is, no matter what it is and no matter how egregious it is. And we modify the system of enforcement so that final decisions are not made by partisan elected officials without judicial review. We provide always for judicial review of the decisions by the partisan official, in this case, the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State now gets to make basically unreviewed decisions on campaign finance violations, including decisions for her own party, as Secretary of State Shemia Fagan made for the Democratic Party of Oregon when it received the $500,000 contribution that ultimately came as a result of fraud on the investors in FTX Corporation, the Sam Bankman-Fried operation, that many observers thought that might have been a sweetheart deal. So we don't allow that. We provide for judicial review. Let me skip a couple things and quickly look at a little bit about disclosure. The various organizations that rank states on disclosure also give Oregon a very low grade, F, and give Washington an A. There are 11 states that also already require that political ads identify their largest money sources, including Washington and California. We don't, and Montana, we don't. We would be joining that group. And just one example of what an effect that has is the 2014 election in Richmond, California. The city of Richmond was faced with clouds of toxic materials coming from a Chevron refinery that would come over Richmond and cause grave harm to the people of Richmond. So the city council got together and said, let's require Chevron to notify us whenever a toxic cloud is headed our way. So Chevron decided instead that they were going to take over the city government of Richmond. And they spent $3 million. Richmond is a city of about 100,000 people. So they spent $3 million promoting its 4 candidates, outspending the other candidates by 50 to 1. But California law required that all of their ads say major funder Chevron Inc. And all of Chevron's candidates lost overwhelmingly, even though they outspent the other candidates by a factor of 50 to 1. So just one other example, if I might. Let's see if I can get all the way to the end here. Yeah. Now, there is the Oregonian ran a very nice series of articles in 2021 or 22 called Polluted by Money, How Corporate Cash Corrupted One of the Greenest States in America, which is an extremely informative article, and it indicates how Oregon is way behind other states when it comes to protecting the environment. And the Oregonian reporter attributes that to the fact that Oregon doesn't have limits on campaign contributions, and that corporate campaign contributions to Oregon politicians are the highest per capita in the United States. One result of that is what happens with global warming. This chart shows the trajectory of the emission of greenhouse gases in Oregon from 1990 to 2020. Basically, it's gone up. It hasn't gone down. What does the Oregon legislature do? Well, it adopts new goals. It adopts really nice goals about reduction in global warming gases, but then doesn't actually adopt policies or requirements that reduce global warming gases. Projected emissions with current policies through the year 2050 is basically no change. So we've really got a phony system of environmental control in Oregon. It's all rhetoric, not reality. And that's just one of the side effects of having a system that is more dominated by big money than almost any other state in the United States. The end. If you want to get involved, then go to honestelections.com. More information on Initiative Petition 9 is in the upper menu under the heading Petition 9. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. Before we take questions, could you stop sharing? And I realized that I did not put your bio in the chat the way I said I was going to do. So I'm going to do that right now. And in the meantime, Bonnie Johnson's going to see if there's any questions for you. But before she does that, I have a question myself. And I just want to get this in there first. Uh-oh, they're telling me your bio's too long. Well, how about that? Maybe we can cut that down a little bit. Okay. Dan Meek has done a lot of stuff. That's the problem here.
My name is Michael Sawicki.
Yeah, another Michael Sawicki. Still too long. I'm trying to get some of these down. I'm sorry that they're very long. But here's my question, and others might wonder about this too. That's great. You have that many signatures so far. And when you're collecting signatures, we're supposed to have the language with us. And the language of this is like 41 pages. And so I am wondering, and just so that everybody knows, it looks like I might get Dan's bio up if I do it like in different paragraphs. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Anyway, can you not carry it physically, Dan? Can you have it ready on your computer to show if someone were to ask, or is that a no-no?
That's a good question. By the way, I put in a link to the specific page to Petition 9 in the chat. where you will find a version of Measure 9 that's only 26 pages. It's in.
Oh, well, one of our members printed it out and it was 41 pages. So
Well,
I don't know.
there's also a 26-page version that says
Okay.
here's
Okay.
the shorter version. It's exactly the same, but a smaller font. But yeah, it's very cumbersome to carry it around, but that is the requirement that the Oregon legislature has imposed. And I've never had the question of whether you can just have it on your laptop or have it on your phone.
Phone. Yeah.
I kind of doubt they would allow it, but I will ask the Secretary of State and get back to you, and you can send the answer to this list. But that's actually an extremely good question.
Great.
I kind of doubt that they would allow that.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Bonnie, were there any other questions for Dan? And if not, if somebody has a question that has popped up in your mind since listening to him.
Yeah, I appreciate that Dan put up the website in the chat where people can go to find out more and print out copies of the petitions, and anybody can collect signatures at this point for Measure Initiative 9.
That's correct.
A question?
And I think that the link I put into it didn't have the dash in it. I think you need the Honest Elections petition -9.
And somebody did ask how many signatures are required in the end. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it, Dan.
Oh, it's 120,000 valid, which means we need around 180, probably to be safe, 180,000 raw.
Raw. Okay.
Can I have a question?
Go ahead.
Your proposition does limit the amount of contribution to these different politician levels. What is it? What is the limit that you're suggesting?
Well, I did have a slide on that. The limits are indicated on petition 9, but basically any individual can contribute $2,000 to a statewide candidate per election, which means the primary and general are separate, and can also contribute $1,000 to any non-statewide candidate. And that's like, I mean, that's like any legislative candidate primarily, but also things like district attorney and circuit court judge. They're not statewide, but they are state officials. Or $500 to any local government candidate, like city council members, county commissioners, mayors, etc.
My screen, is that true for everybody?
I did not catch your full question.
You periodically you're paused on my screen. I don't know if that's happening for anybody else.
No.
Yeah, you go on a pause. I would never mind then.
Well, if you go to that link anyway, you would be able to see the limitations. They're all spelled out. It's very transparent. There is a couple other questions here, Dan. A quick one is the date the signatures are required.
By July 5th of next year.
And then how would unions be affected in terms of their ability to donate?
Well, unions can form small donor committees, and their members can, or anyone else can, contribute up to $200 to each small donor committee that they form. Any union local can also form its own small donor committee and receive contributions from individuals of up to $250 per year. And then they can turn around and contribute that money to candidates if they want to, or make their own ads, do what are called independent expenditures, and make their own ads for Oregon's candidates. Each of them is also at every level of the union a membership organization under our measure. They're what's known under federal law as 501c5 organizations, labor organizations. And so each of them at every level under our measure can also contribute the amounts indicated, which are 10,000. Excuse me, let me find it here. 10,000 to any candidate at any level in cash, plus 10,000 in-kind personal services to any candidate at any level. In contrast, for-profit corporations can contribute nothing to anyone
In Oregon.
in any Oregon race. 24 other states already do this. They ban corporate contributions in all candidate races. So we would be joining about half of the states in doing that.
Here's an interesting question, Dan. Will any of these amounts be indexed to inflation?
Yes, all of them are indexed to inflation. I'm trying to remember what the period of time. Every 2 years or every 5 years, they're indexed for inflation. Most states do index their limits, particularly since the United States Supreme Court, in its 2007 Vermont decision, said that the lack of indexing of contribution limits is a red flag of potential violation of the First Amendment. So yeah, it's indexed for inflation.
Okay, great.
How does this proposition affect the non, the organization that doesn't have to pay taxes? I'm blanking on the word here.
It's nonprofit organization.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, as the slideshow indicated, that any what's called a membership organization, it's a nonprofit organization, but it has to have some members, is able to contribute to any candidate at any level, $10,000 plus $10,000 of in-kind personal services to the candidate.
And that's disclosed then, individual donors?
No, the membership organization does need to disclose if the membership organization is complying with the contribution limits, it does not have to disclose where those funds come from. If the membership organization is undertaking what's called an independent expenditure, or is contributing money to an entity that makes an independent expenditure, and that amount is greater than $10,000, then the membership organization would need to disclose any donor to the organization of funds that can be used for political purposes in excess of $5,000 from the donor.
Is this proposition as simple as some of the other examples you were showing from other states? It still seems complicated to me, but how do we relate in that regard?
Well, the states are kind of all over the place. But you will find that most state laws on campaign finance are several dozen pages. California in particular is probably over 100 pages, 100 single-space pages. And many states supplement that with rules, more detailed rules. But we tried to put everything in the measure. We tried to make it as specific as possible, because we didn't create any kind of an independent commission to do enforcement. About half the states have independent commissions to enforce their campaign finance laws. Putting that in the measure and putting in how to select an independent commission that would truly be independent, of course, as Norm Turrell would educate us all about, adds a lot of complexity as well, adds at least another 10 pages to the measure. So we didn't do that. We left enforcement basically in the hands of a partisan elected official, the Secretary of State. So we made the requirements as specific as possible so that they cannot be enforced in a preferential way. In other states, the requirements are somewhat less specific, but then that there's an independent agency that adopts very specific rules of enforcement rules and then enforces the rules. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Okay, one last question during this section. I really wanted to ask this one because somebody followed the rule about putting question marks or a question thing there. Is that why was this an initiative rather than legislation?
in its 160-year history, the Oregon legislature has never adopted limits on campaign contributions and has never adopted meaningful disclosure requirements. The Oregon legislature, the people adopted both of those in 1906 in an initiative. The Oregon legislature then repealed that in 1973. And the people adopted another measure on limits in 1994. The Oregon legislature partially repealed that in 1997. So at the legislature, you're asking people who are elected in a big money system to change the system that they succeeded in. So obviously it's not going to work, and it's not going to happen, and it never has happened. And the other question was, are there judicial findings that can impair Initiative 9? There used to be. The Oregon Supreme Court in 1997 said that all contribution limits are protected by the Oregon Free Speech Clause, and you can't have any limits. Well, we got that reversed unanimously by the Oregon Supreme Court in 2020 in upholding the Multnomah County measure. Supreme Court in 2020 expressly repudiated the 1997 decision, saying it was wrong. There was no basis for it. So on the state level, there aren't any, I don't think there are any judicial findings that can impair Initiative 9. On the federal level, you do have to follow the guidelines that the Supreme Court has indicated, or you'll suffer the fate of Vermont. And so the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld limits that are lower than the limits that are proposed in Initiative Petition 9. If we were limiting statewide candidates to $500, we would probably have a problem, but we're not. We're limiting those to $2,000, so we shouldn't have a problem in the Supreme Court either.
Great.
Barbara, Rick Bennett, a quick question or statement, actually.
Yes.
Dan mentioned at the very beginning of his presentation that the League of Women Voters of Oregon are in fact supporting Initiative Petition 9. I just wanted to again reinforce that that's based on our public policy position on campaign finance reform. And as Barbara mentioned, you can find that on the State League's website if you want to read the actual full stated policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Dan, thank you very much. I know you have a bit of an emergency tonight and you need to leave a little early. So thank you very much for a great presentation. It was very helpful. I hope that everybody liked it. So we
thank you.
I wish we all had slides like that showing Oregon's F in relation to their nearby states.
The slideshow is on the website, and you're welcome to download it.
Yay.
All
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and yes, somebody said great presentation, Mr. Meek, and that's very true. We are going on this time to ranked choice voting, and wonderful Solmara, I put her bio in the chat, also had to separate it. And would mention she's the only person here tonight that's not going to ask for signatures, but so that's it. And Saul, you are on.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to share more about ranked choice voting. I just wanted to share a little bit more about myself first before I open up my presentation. Like Barbara mentioned, my name is Solmora. I use she and her pronouns, and I am the advocacy director at the Coalition of Communities of Color. So that is my day job, but I do work very closely with an organization called Oregon Ranked Choice Voting Advocates. And I did put their website in the chat here, which you can open up. So tonight I am representing Oregon Ranked Choice Voting Advocates as I share more information about this effort, which is going to be on the November 2024 ballot. All right, so I have a little presentation here for folks. Also, as I have my screen share open, this is what the website looks like. So again, if you just go to OregonRCV.org, that will take you to more information. All right, so for this slideshow, I definitely did keep it very sweet and short. and we will have more time to get into questions and comments at the end. So I wanted to start off by just giving some context about our current elections. I'm sure that everyone here in this space can tell me different ways that you believe our election system is not serving everyone in Oregon. It was very difficult to narrow this down to only a couple of issues that exist in the current voting system, but here were the ones that I went with. So you can think back to the 2022 election. One of the things that we see happening very often in our election system is that voters feel pressured to vote strategically. So let's say that there's a candidate that is running for office that really reflects your values. Let's say that you are someone who is very passionate about climate change and wanting to find solutions to fix that issue. And there's a candidate that very much aligns with that. What happens right now is that if that candidate is not really in the lead in that election, you're going to feel like you have to vote for one of the candidates that actually is in the top. Otherwise, it feels as though your vote is not actually going to contribute to the final outcome. And so for the voter experience, quite frankly, we just see that voters feel very frustrated. They feel very exhausted. And a lot of the times I've talked to different people that say that they don't vote at all anymore because it's something that just does not feel good. This is very common, especially with newer voters, younger voters. It's their first time actually participating in the system, and it's not a system that feels very good to participate in. This issue also affects candidates as well. Candidates sometimes don't even consider running for office because they don't want to be the reason that a similar candidate is having that vote split. So for example, let's say that I'm running on a platform about renters' rights. If there's another candidate that also shares that same platform, I probably will not want to enter that race because I'm going to be taking votes away from that candidate. And this happens with so many different types of constituencies, and it also happens with ideologies. Another problem with our current system is that, increasingly the campaigns are becoming more and more expensive, and they're also becoming more toxic and negative. I'm sure you can, find an image from the 2022 election of all of the negative campaign ads that we see circulating. This tactic is very common because candidates are really encouraged to pit themselves against one another instead of focusing on the issues that they're actually running for office to represent. And so this is something that just overall creates a very negative culture for people to participate in voting. I think that voters are also, not participating because everything that they see is just telling them, I'm better than this candidate, right? It's not about believing in issues and wanting to change our system for the better. Another problem as well that happens quite a lot is that if you have a race with more than 3 candidates, they can win with less than the majority, so less than 50% plus 1. And this, again, is happening very frequently. So if you're a voter that voted for another candidate, it just feels like your vote was wasted. And to see such, important people in office getting 35% of the vote, it just feels like, again, so many people's voices didn't really contribute to that. We should have a system where candidates do need to have a majority support from Oregon voters. All right, so how does ranked choice voting work and what is it? Ranked choice voting is a voting method that allows voters the option to rank the candidates in their order of preference. So on your ballot, instead of only having to pick one candidate, now you're able to say, candidate B is my #1 choice. That is the candidate that I absolutely want to represent me. And you can also say candidate D is my 2nd choice, and you're able to rank the candidates, in your preferred order. If you would really only like to vote for one candidate, let's say that the others are just not really speaking to you, there's only one person that you're really passionate about, you don't have to rank them. It truly is up to each voter. But the thing is that you have the option. You have more of an ability to actually express your preferences on your ballot. And I do want to talk a little bit about the technical side of how ranked choice voting works. And I think, you know, looking at the visuals, this is really where the magic starts to come together. So at a high level, the way that the counting works using ranked choice voting is that you are counting the ballots in different rounds. The candidates that have the fewest amounts of votes are eliminated from that race. And this is where the really cool thing happens. If you voted for a losing candidate, it doesn't mean that your voice doesn't get to count. It means that now your ballot is going to count for the next candidate that you marked. So that means that your ballot just has more of an ability to actually contribute to a candidate that you are satisfied with. And so I do have a couple of visuals just to give you an example of what this actually looks like. I know sometimes it's hard to kind of imagine how this process works. So let's look at this mock election here. So in this mock election, we have an open seat for the governor, and there are 3 candidates that are running in this election. So you have candidate A, which is this orange color. You have candidate B, which is this blue color. And you also have candidate C, which is this green color. So in this visual, this is the threshold of how many votes a candidate needs to win. So they need 50% plus 1 to actually be elected. So in this first round, if we're looking at all of the different ballots and who people put as their first choice, no one quite has enough to win. And so we go on to the next round and we eliminate the candidate that has the fewest amounts of votes. So candidate C had the fewest amount of votes, and so now they are eliminated from the race. And so on the previous slide, you will notice that candidate C has the green votes, right? And on this slide, they changed color. The reason they changed color is because these voters marked these candidates as their next choice. So now you are seeing that all of these votes are going to count for candidate A. All of these blue votes are going to count for candidate B. This is still giving those voters an opportunity to participate in the election in a meaningful way, rather than just having their vote wasted and feeling like they didn't contribute to the final outcome. So here we see those votes actually getting transferred. We see that some votes went to candidate B and some votes went to candidate A according to how those voters marked their next choice. And now candidate A has enough votes to actually win this election. They have a majority of the votes, and that's how ranked choice voting works. So it is possible that if in the first round, a candidate automatically, let's say they get 75% of the vote, they would win. You don't have to go through any other rounds because they already have enough votes to win. However, there is a trend across the United States where candidates do not receive a majority of the votes. And so that's why it's really good that you have this automatic runoff that happens so that voters, again, are still able to have their other choices count. So that's a little bit about the visuals. Like Barbara mentioned, today I am not here to gather any signatures. So this is actually a bill that was introduced in the 2023 state legislative session. It is House Bill 2004, and it is a referral to the ballot. So it was approved by the Oregon legislature. And again, as voters, it is going to show up on your November 2024 ballot. I did want to mention some of the different elected officials that championed this during the legislative session. That includes Speaker Dan Rayfield, Majority Leader Julie Fahey, and many others. And I think it's very unique that this was able to move through the legislative process because it really was an opportunity for elections officials and state legislators to really help craft the policy and make sure that we had the most effective and comprehensive version of House Bill 2004 that is now again going to be on the ballot. So what happens if this gets approved? by Oregon voters. If this gets approved, the measure is going to establish ranked choice voting for all of the statewide offices. So that includes the governor, state treasurer, secretary of state, and so on. And it will also apply to federal offices. So that includes the US president and US Congress people. And this is for both primary and general elections. I do want to emphasize that this measure does not open the primary. That is a question that we get very often. The closed primary system will still continue unless another measure also gets approved that would open it. But this specific measure does not touch the closed primary in any way. The other really amazing part about this measure is that it would establish a local option for cities and counties in Oregon to use ranked choice voting if they would like. And by doing this, by permitting those local jurisdictions to opt into using ranked choice voting, it's going to help pave the way for more effective learning tools, both for county clerks and for how we do voter education in the state. We're already seeing that more jurisdictions in Oregon are already using different processes to opt into using ranked choice voting. And so we really need to standardize the way that we are educating voters about this, and also the software and the technology for how we run ranked choice voting elections. So this would provide the support that our county clerks need to be able to implement ranked choice voting here in Oregon. I wanted to show on this slide a couple of our key supporters in the state legislative session. We had over 35 statewide endorsing organizations. And again, here are just some of the logos. We had support from labor unions like SEIU, Becoon, Oregon AFSCME Council 75. We also had support from different culturally specific organizations like APONO, the Coalition of Communities of Color, Urban League of Portland, NEA, and we also had support from the League of Women Voters, ACLU of Oregon, the Rural Organizing Project, and the list goes on. If you are really interested in looking at the full list of every single organization that supported House Bill 2004, that is available on the website, which I put in the chat a couple of minutes ago. So why ranked choice voting? What is the benefit of this system and how does it improve our current elections? So one of the first things that I really like to mention is that ranked choice voting is a very simple improvement that will allow voters to have more voice and more meaningful choices. With the current climate of our democracy, not only at the state level, but also at the national level, I think that voters are just feeling very burnt out, very hopeless, very frustrated. They don't want to keep participating in a system like this. And I think that allowing people to rank the candidates is really helping to empower their ballots. And again, helps them choose candidates that are very values aligned with what they want. Ranked choice voting also leads to better representation. Ranked choice voting will allow candidates to be able to run and actually enter a contest without that fear of splitting the vote. Because voters are now able to rank multiple candidates, and they're not just limited to that one option, more and more candidates are actually going to feel encouraged like they can run for office because, again, they're not detracting those votes away from a similar candidate. And as a voter, this is also a benefit for us, right? We're going to see a bigger pool of more diverse candidates, and that's only giving us more choices to actually find a candidate that is willing to support the issues that we care about. One of the things that I wanted to mention is a study by the National Civic League. They looked at different Bay Area cities that use ranked choice voting. And one of the things that they found in this study is that using ranked choice voting, more women and more people of color were able to get elected within those jurisdictions. So we do have data across the United States that is showing us that this can lead to more reflective representation. And lastly, we do not have to worry about the spoiler effect. Ranked choice voting is going to allow voters to vote for the candidate that again reflects their values without feeling like they're going to waste their vote because those candidates may or may not be in the lead. And a couple more reasons we are going to see campaigns become more positive than what the current landscape really produces. Because ranked choice voting allows candidates to have multiple rankings on their ballot, candidates are incentivized to not only care about first choice votes, but also second choice, third choice, and so on. And so as a candidate, you really do have to reach out to a broader range of voters to be able to secure all of those votes. And this means that as a candidate, you can also build more coalitions with like-minded candidates. So for example, again, going back to that, me running on a renters' rights platform, if there's another candidate that has that exact same platform, we benefit from working together in the sense that we can share voter support, right? I'm going to tell their voters and their base, hey, if you really like that candidate, then mark me as your second choice because we have a very similar platform. And so in this way, you are incentivized to collaborate with other candidates that are like-minded instead of focusing on those negative attacks and reducing it to like very individualistic qualities. With ranked choice voting, you do have to focus on the bigger issues that you are running to represent. And lastly, ranked choice voting is already here. It is rapidly being adopted by voters in our state. Benton County is the first jurisdiction in Oregon that has used ranked choice voting, and they have been using it since 2016. Corvallis also recently adopted it, and they used it in 2022 for the first time because they wanted to align their ballot with the county as well. So the city council in Corvallis decided to adopt ranked choice voting. And then two other more recent examples that you may have heard of is that Multnomah County adopted ranked choice voting and is going to use it in 2024 for county elections. And Portland also adopted it for city elections. So these are just a couple of jurisdictions that either use it or are expected to use it by 2024. All right, a couple of very key FAQ questions. So again, if a voter only wants to vote for one candidate, can they do that? Yes. If, again, you truly only have one person that you really want to represent you, you do not have to rank any of the other candidates. But I do want to stress that in different places that use ranked choice voting in the United States, people actually enjoy using the rankings. With different places that have adopted this for the first time, over a majority of voters are actually ranking more than one candidate. So it's something that is there as an option, and people are actually taking that option. Where else is ranked choice voting used? 51 jurisdictions across the United States are using ranked choice voting, including 2 states, Alaska and Maine. There are 3 counties that use it, including Benton County here in Oregon, and there are 46 cities that use it, including Corvallis, Oregon, San Francisco, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and many more. How does ranked choice voting compare to other voting methods? So as an Oregonian, you may have heard about other alternative voting methods, specifically star voting, which is a Oregon specific incentive. It was created here. It's a concept for rating candidates. And the biggest difference between ranked choice voting and star voting is that ranked choice voting has a framework. It's already been used in certified elections across the country. So we have really, so many best practices about how to do voter education, how to make sure that people understand this. We have that curriculum developed. The software exists because other jurisdictions use it. So I would say with star voting specifically, It's something that has not been fully tested. It has never been used in a certified election anywhere in the world.
So it's
So-
time to wrap it up. It's
Okay,
okay.
yeah, I just have one last thing on
Perfect.
here. Does this include state legislative seats? No, it does not. Again, it's only for statewide specific seats. All right, let me stop screen sharing. Thank you for the time check.
No, I apologize. Yep.
No, appreciate it.
And we had, Bonnie, did you have the questions for Saul? There was at least one that came in.
John Curtis asked, am I to understand that with ranked choice voting, I would no longer have one only vote between multiple candidates, but multiple votes for one or more? I'm thinking he means one office. Are we talking about multiple candidates for one office? I'm not quite clear.
So I think with the question, John, so every voter still has one vote that ultimately that vote only counts for one candidate, but you're able to rank the candidates that you support. So let's say that I decide to rank 3 out of the 6 candidates that are running for office. Ultimately, my vote will only count for one of those 3 candidates. But if it doesn't count for the first choice, it'll count for the second choice. So it is one vote, one person, but the way that the process happens for who ultimately gets that vote is different than the current system. Does that make more sense?
No,
Yeah.
I'm still confused, but I know allow the timekeeper to move it forward.
I wanted to mention something, Saul, if I could butt in
Yeah.
here and say this, ranked choice voting has been in the courts at times. And one of the things, it's always been questioned about, is it one person, one vote? And it really, one of the little phrases people remember is that it is one person, one vote per one round of counting. So that's kind of how it works. Were there some other questions in the chat that Saul didn't get to yet?
I will mention just very quickly for John and for others, I have some video resources that I can send over to Barbara as well as follow-up.
Can I get one question
Go ahead.
on if the candidate gets 51% on the first go round, then this issue is irrelevant, right?
That is correct, yes. So
Okay.
if a candidate has a majority right out of the bat, they get elected. However, that does not tend to happen, especially
another
if there are
question-
more than 3
Another
candidates.
question, what was you said it doesn't apply to primaries?
No, it does. It applies to both the primary and the general election. However, it does not open the primary.
Explain that. I don't get what you're
So,
telling me.
yeah, so in Oregon, to be able to participate in the primary, which is a closed primary, you do have to be registered with a political party. If you are not registered with a political party, you are not able to vote for that
Yes.
specific
Oh,
election.
no, I understand that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it doesn't open it.
So, and this applies to, you did say it does apply to the federal, the president, the Congress, the Senate, all of those
Yes.
elections. And of course, when you're talking Democrats, this next election, it's obvious that it's not going to be much of an issue with Biden running. But when you get to the Republicans, there's a whole, plethora of folks that are running for that position. So that's where it applies. And if I ran this through every scenario I could think of last night, and I couldn't see a negative factor, because every primary, I know I'm for one, I have maybe one that outpaces the rest, but I have a second I really feel strongly about, maybe a third I don't really think is great, but it's the next best thing. And
Yeah.
this will allow my vote to, number one, pick the person I pick as the number one choice. And if they get there for 51%, then that's the end of that story. But if not, then at least my second person has a chance. So I don't lose
Totally.
out. I don't lose out entirely. It's not going to go right to the maybe third, fourth, fifth, sixth choice
Mhm.
that I had. I get to have a first choice and a second choice and a third, whatever, and it will definitely give my voice to those people in that election. If the first doesn't make it, the second one, okay, wins, and I'm still a happy guy.
That
Third,
was the
third,
best
third one.
explanation, Steve.
is that do I get it?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
No,
much.
I can't see a flaw in the process. I mean, you're going to win. You're going to win or do better. but
Okay,
you
thanks,
don't,
Steve.
You don't just lose.
Thank you very much, Saul. We really appreciate it. And as you know, this is an issue near and dear to my heart personally. So I really appreciate it. I hope you stay with us if you can, but we understand if you can't. And I am looking for our next speaker. Is Norman Turl here? I am not seeing him.
Norman, he's one of the Michael Sawickies.
He doesn't seem to be speaking up. Bonnie, I hate to do this to you, but since you presented on
Have you checked your email, Barbara, to see if he's emailing you?
I have actually,
Oh, okay.
and I have emailed him twice, so I'm not certain what's happening. So like I said, poor Bonnie, but she did present on this issue twice before in person, and I think that she can give us a little bit of information about people, not politicians. So Bonnie, even though I don't have a bio for you in the chat, maybe you can explain to everyone what People Not Politicians is about and our efforts for independent redistricting commissions and so on. So I'll let you go for it.
Now, I will do my best. I wish I had beautiful slides with charts and, it's also effective, but you'll just have to put up with a talking head as I try to recap what I discussed before. Currently, the Oregon Constitution empowers the legislature to do the decennial redistricting every 10 years when the census is taken. This is a very crucial time, particularly in 2020, because Oregon gained a congressional seat, which is a very big deal. Our population increased sufficiently that we went from 5 seats to 6 seats. So there was going to be major reevaluating all of our voting districts. And traditionally, when the legislature draws the district lines, they are highly motivated to get reelected themselves. And we have this science of gerrymandering where you ensure that your district will still reelect you. And 97% of incumbents in Oregon are reelected each year. And we sort of think of Oregon as a kind and gentle state, but the politics are pretty stereotypically about self-preservation. So this wonderful organization has been formed called People Not Politicians to improve this situation. Our surrounding states have independent redistricting commissions, Washington State, California, Arizona, and there is an amazing group I didn't know about called the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. which rates all 50 states in the union to see how well they do on having fair and competitive and geographically accurate voting districts. And Washington State got an A. It was an A in all categories. Arizona got an A. It has an independent redistricting commission. It was A, and C in geographic features. California got a B. It has a bigger challenge. Oregon got an F. We're an F. And, you know, that's pretty disillusioning. But I think it's definitely time for Oregon to have an independent redistricting commission. We want fair and competitive election districts. And this organization, People Not Politicians, has a very approachable website that has the information. It is a diverse coalition that includes the League of Women Voters of Oregon, Common Cause Oregon, the Oregon State Chamber of Commerce, Oregon Farm Bureau, that's very important, Oregon State Chamber of Commerce, Independent Party of Oregon, OSBERG, NAACP, Oregon Home Builders Association, Oregon Association of Nurseries, and the Klamath Tribal Council. So this is just a few of the organizations, but it shows there's a tremendous amount of support for having an independent redistricting commission. And I can just give you a quick summary of how this would be created. It would be to form 12 members of the commission. And this would be for a redrawing of our district for 2025. So we would vote this measure in November of 2024 and set to work to get our 12 commissioners in 2025 so that our future elections will not be an F in gerrymandering. And the process has been thought out very well. There would be 4 representatives of the largest political party, 4 representatives, the second largest political party, and 4 representatives of all the unaffiliated voters. I guess 2022 was the first year when Oregon had 42% unaffiliated or other voters, could be small parties, aside from Republican, Democrat. And they have been pretty much excluded from the redistricting process up until now, 42%. So anybody who can apply to become one of these commissioners, there are restrictions against who cannot apply. And if you have run for public office or you have been intensively supporting political campaigns, or your family members work in political offices or, you know, are involved in political campaigns, they just want people who are community engaged, very engaged, who are, the kind of people who are open to finding solutions and who are qualified in their experience and knowledgeable. You have to be a resident and vote for the past 2 or 3 years. It's not terribly restrictive. The important part is that you've not been part of a political campaign in a major way. Then they can accept applicants for the 2 major parties and unaffiliated applicants, up to 300 in each category. Somehow I don't think you're going to get 300 in each category, but then a panel of 3 judges will be selected who are impartial, and 1 from each party and unaffiliated. We're sticking with this 3-part theme here. And to winnow the selection down to 150 candidates, there'd be 50 from each party and 50 from the unaffiliated. And these candidates are forwarded to the Secretary of State, who will then select 2 from each group. The Secretary of State will select the first 6 commissioners. And then this set of 6 commissioners will select the second set of commissioners from the original applicants. And it's a pretty speedy schedule. They hope to have all the commissioners in place by March of 2020. What are we talking? 2025. And the candidates will then go to the commission members. 12 commission members will then go to work in drawing the lines, and they will hold open public hearings throughout the states. They've chosen 7 districts representing coastal Oregon, southern Oregon, the Multnomah area. They are making a special effort, I think, for eastern Oregon, and including one county that borders Idaho. So they will have public hearings in all these 7 areas, and that this is part of the openness, the fairness, the to create competitive districts, so all of our voters ideally have a chance to vote for truly representational people. They would, you ask how they'll be paid. It will just be a per diem for the days they actually work as commissioners, with travel expenses, reasonable travel expenses reimbursed. So it really is a civic labor of love for these candidates to do this, in a challenging job. But we don't want Oregon to have an F rating for fairness and competitiveness. I think it'll be, hopefully, signature gathering is well underway. We have until July of 2024. You need 160,000 signatures, because this is to amend the state constitution. Oregon state constitution gives this power to the legislature, and we're taking the power away from the legislature and giving it to this independent commission, so that we have fair legislative districts, and we feel all people will be represented at the same way we're supporting ranked choice voting. The League is very, very supportive of independent redistricting commissions, and to have voters feel, my vote will count now. We don't want voters to be discouraged and give up about voting. So
thank you, Bonnie. This was really, I'm sorry that we put you on the spot, but you did a great job. And
this was a condensed version.
And we're making up a little bit of time here if we can, but there might be some more questions before we go on to the county people. Somebody did want to know how many, if you know this, how many signatures have already been obtained?
Well, this has been hard to come by.
Okay. You mean that piece of information?
That piece of information. No, the signatures are coming right along. We need at least 160,000, so you put in the extra factor, but we have until July to get the signatures. And at this point, people, not politicians, is kind of short-staffed and could use more volunteers, so they can stay up with counting petitions. Their website makes it very easy to print out copies of the petitions. And I have some that I'm mailing in right now, and they need the petitions to keep coming in, but People Not Politicians is an easy website to remember.
We've also, we've put the link in the chat too a couple times. I don't know if it's right there. I'll get it here and put it in for you one more time.
And the bill is only 8 pages. How about that? It's good news.
Great.
It's very readable, and it's included, summary is included on the petitions. It's very helpful, so people can be informed when they're gathering signatures.
Before we go on to our last section, which is very interesting, does anybody have any more questions about the People Not Politicians? Okie dokie. We are going to go on to Denise Kraus, and I have to make sure that, okay, she is able to share her screen as well. I've done that, Denise, and I've put a little bit about you in the chat so people can learn a little bit more about you too. So go for it.
Okay, I had a question. On this system you described, is it used elsewhere in the country?
Washington State, California, Arizona, yeah.
Okay, okay, I thought you indicated that.
Yes.
And did you say that the Secretary of State picks the 6 people that are going to be on that panel, or whatever you call it, the 6 delegates,
Yes.
or whatever they are?
2 from each group of 50 that judges have pared down. And it's interesting that it says randomly selects the 2 from each group. So there we are.
Okay,
Yeah,
I guess you have one more question, and we are going to have to rush through these to get to the next section. Alice, if you have a quick question, go ahead.
I do. Could you please put into the chat a link to the organization that ranks various states on transparency and so forth?
Yes.
The report card?
Yes.
That
Yes.
would be great.
The-
Thank you.
The Princeton Gerrymandering Project, great group. They do
If
all
you-
15 states.
If you have the link, put it in the chat, Bonnie, and we're
Okay.
going to go on to
Yes.
Jackson County now. So
Okay.
Denise, sorry we interrupted you.
Oh, no worries. Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on right here in Jackson County. We're trying to restructure the Jackson County Commission. Let's see if oh, whoops, sorry. Okay, so we are proposing 3 ballot measures. We want to get 3 ballot measures on the November 2024 ballot. The first one is to make the county commission position, the county commissioner position, nonpartisan. And currently, it is the only county position, elected position, that is partisan. All the others are nonpartisan. And that makes a big difference. Why? Mainly because in Jackson County, we have about 40% of our voters are non-affiliated voters. And that number is growing while the numbers of Republicans and Democrats are actually declining. And so what that means in a partisan election is that all of those voters cannot participate in the primary. This position doesn't even show up on their ballot. So to make this first change, to make it nonpartisan, would open up the county commission position, the election, to all of our voters. And this is something that is being done all over Oregon. We are kind of late to the game. In fact, after us, there will only be 8 counties left in Oregon who haven't done this already. So Klamath has done it, Douglas has done it, and last year Deschutes County has done it. So we are we're just kind of doing something that others have been doing for a while that will make a big difference here in the way we vote. The second ballot measure that we are doing at the same time is to expand the number of commissioners from 3 to 5. And we have had 3 commissioners since the county commission was established in 1853. And in our official census back then was less than 4,000 people. So now that we have over 250,000 people, we have a lot of people in our county who don't feel like there's enough representation, that we don't all have representation here and we need more. So 170 years, we've had 3. So things have changed a whole lot in our county. Then we also have the Oregon Public Meetings Law. That means that if there are only 3, then 2 county commissioners then would make a quorum. So they can't actually talk about county business with each other. So they have to have an intermediary like the county administrator going back and forth between them. So to expand that from 3 to 5 would make a quorum would be 3, and then they could actually talk about county business amongst themselves and become a more effective governing body. So thirdly, then you might say, well, if you know how much the county commissioners make in Jackson County, you might think, well, that's going to cost us a lot of money because they are they're the highest paid commissioners of all the counties in Oregon. And I got some of the national data. I couldn't get all of the national data, but I couldn't find anywhere in the country that's paid more than our county commissioners right here in Jackson County. In fact, they're currently making $45,000 more than our governor. So we propose to redistribute the existing salaries of 3 over 5. So we get 5 for the price of 3 without raising the cost to the taxpayers. And what that does then is brings our county back in line with other counties of similar size. And it's going to also, it's still, a very good job. It gives a good livable wage. It's still going to be way more than the average household income in Jackson County. So it's, it does put it in line with other counties. And currently the reason why it's so high partly is because it goes up for length of service and a cost of living raise. And by the time these terms end, the current commissioners, the current 3 will have served 28 years in those positions. So it's just what happened in Jackson County in 1978, we got a county administrator. And at that point, all the administrative duties of the county commissioners shifted to the county the administrative duties of the county commissioners shifted to the county administrator. And their duties became more judicial, quasi-judicial, more of a policy-making body. So their responsibilities went down, but their salaries continued to go up. So we can make some changes here without increasing for the taxpayers. So we're talking about doing all 3 of these things at one time. Many counties, like I said, have done it. They usually do nonpartisan just by itself. And actually, Deschutes, who did nonpartisan last year, they're now going back this year and they're going to go get signatures again to expand from 3 to 5 and to redistribute the salaries. The same things that we're doing here, they're just doing it in 2 different tries. Now, in Oregon, when you do an initiative like this, you get 2 years to gather the signatures. But in Jackson County, we only get 1 year, and that was decided at some point. I'm not sure what year by the county commission. So we have half the time, and then we have less than that because we need to be in 90 days before the November 2024 ballot. So we have less than a year to get, our number is 10,500, and that's with the padding built in to get 10,500 signatures. Actually, it's 10,500 signers because we need that many for each of the ballot measures. So that would be 31,500 signatures. Now we want to do that in 6 months. And, there's an advantage to doing it quickly. If we took 1 year or 2 years, if we had it, people forget, if they've already signed or, the momentum lags. And so to do it rapidly, I think is a benefit to all of us. We've broken it down to have goals by community all across the county. This isn't going to just happen in 1 or 2 places. This is happening all over the community. We have team leaders in communities. We have goals that we're trying to meet. And then we have circulators that are already active and more to be recruited, hopefully. So here's our basically our timeline. We got our approval to circulate from the Jackson County Elections Office on September 15th. And so we're actually 6 weeks in currently. We have, after our first 30 days, we should have had 1,600. We had 2,703. So we're exceeding our goals. We're pretty excited about that. Currently, we're at 6 weeks. We've got over 3,600 now. We think that we're hoping that tomorrow, Halloween, is going to be a big day for us. And we want to get a lot of signatures. Our biggest one-day signature event happened. We had over 500 signatures in 1 day. So that was pretty exciting. Now, we're hoping to have we are going to have a party. on Friday, November 17th, and that's hopefully going to be a halfway party. It could be called an almost halfway party, but we're trying for halfway. So we have a good website that's got pretty much all of the information you might need to find here about the campaign. This is our little barometer and showing you, this hasn't been updated for a little bit because we're about now 1/3 of the way through. So we're 1/3 of the way there. And, you know, we still got a long ways to go and we're going into winter. So we still need lots of volunteers to help and to get involved. And on our website, you can also find where we're going to be. So we are at a lot of standing locations here across the county, several across the county, so people can come and get and sign the petitions, or we'll be at events like tomorrow's Halloween parade. That's what we're hoping to do. Have a lot of success tomorrow. And if you go up here under sign petitions, this is where you find where we're going to be. And this list does change a little bit, so it's good to check. But also, if you go down a little bit further, you can see sign at home. So this is a good option for people who may not be able to get to one of the events or to one of the standing locations. They can print it out. All 3 pages come as one file, sign, date, all of them, put them in one envelope and mail them back to our PO box. So that's going very well as well. So I would like to point out again, the jacksoncountyforall.org is our website address. And on the website, I'll go back one. If you look up at the top, you can, that's if you go to get involved. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, right here. There it is. Okay. If you click on get involved, we have a form there and you can sign up. You'll get on the mailing list. You'll get the numbers report, see how we're doing, and you can volunteer. And if you volunteer, we'll get in touch with you. We are hoping to, currently we have about 67 circulators. We're hoping to get about 120 total. And that'll get us there. So we're ahead of things now, but we know that, you know, the holidays and winter are coming. So we need everybody, all hands on deck, basically. So I want to stop and take questions because I'm sure there are a few.
Well, somebody asked, and I think it might have been Bonnie, where you can get a t-shirt. And I happen to know, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so actually it's on our website, and there is, to the right, there is an option that says get a shirt. And you can click there and order a shirt. And we're all walking around in black t-shirts with the Jackson County on the front saying Jackson County for all. And that's in our colorful clipboards, and that's how people can find us really easily. It's a nice shirt. And we're also going to be selling tickets to the fundraiser party on the website as well soon, very soon.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but would anybody like to ask a question before we lose Denise here? Looks like you covered everything. Bonnie, did you have a question?
That or they're tired.
Yeah, when I talk to people on hikes or anywhere, they really get it, you know, that we need more representation, that Jackson County needs 5 commissioners. And so it's an easy sell. Yeah,
it is. And the beauty of it, you were talking about the long document before, 41 pages or 26 pages. Our document is 1 page, and that includes all 3 measures because it's so simple. It's so straightforward. There's nothing that we're trying to trip people up with. You know, we're making very straightforward changes. We're making it from partisan to nonpartisan, just changing a couple words there, 3 to 5. And then, the other thing about expanding the or redistributing the salaries is that we'll change the way that future increases are handled. So that will be tied to how the county is doing, the average wages of Jackson County residents. So it'll be indexed to that. If the county's doing great, then the county commissioners will get a raise. If they're not, if we're in a recession or something, then they won't be just getting that raise no matter what. So that'll change in that as well.
So
Here's
that
a
it doesn't
question.
have-
there's a good league question here.
Yes.
I'm giving that to you.
Okay. Has the league endorsed this? And if so, can the league write a ballot argument in support? And that is the question. I will say that the league supports this measure because we have had a position that covers every one of those three portions since at least 2019. We had done a 2-year study on county government and went through all the hoops I mentioned earlier in this meeting, and we came up with a position for county government that I put a link into the chat for. And so it is possible that we could write a ballot argument that is for the board to decide.
May
Let's
I
add one more thing if I could.
I'm sorry to jump in. Did I miss it? Will if you're successful, will there no longer be a primary for the commissioner race?
Because it's nonpartisan?
Correct.
I don't think that means that we wouldn't have a primary. Am I wrong, Barbara or Bonnie?
Well, since you don't spell it out, no, it wouldn't. It would still be a primary if, well,
See,
if it's
primaries are
right,
parties.
right,
So
yeah.
I guess then we'd have just one election and it would be at the general election.
Good.
I think you know that answer better than I do, Denise.
Yeah, well, I think that, let's see. What's going to mean is that you can have more people running for the position, and you can have all kinds, you don't have to declare your party. And I'm not really sure if it would preclude having a, having the primary, but Eleanor, can you add to that?
I'm gonna base this on my memory, which is right like half the time. I think I remember reading on the Jackson County clerk website about how the nonpartisan races work, and if memory serves, like for example, sheriff or whatever, there is they appear on a ballot in May, and that unless there's like only one, which happens frequently, and so there's they get it down to 2 candidates on the May ballot, but not in. We didn't see that last year, I think, because there just weren't that many candidates running. I think we saw it with the assessor in the past, if you remember seeing a ballot with multiple folks running for Jackson County assessor, which is a nonpartisan, and then in the end there's just 2 folks. So that's my guess how that, so kind of like a primary but no political parties. That's my best guess.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to guess because the league should know this, and I guess right now we don't. I wanted to mention one other.
Right. I think it was. Yeah.
I want to mention one other thing that the league supports, and have Denise discuss this as well. We I know that there was discussion of going to districts, and the local league is not in support of that in this circumstances. And I thought Denise might want to speak briefly to that as well.
Yeah, so when we started this process, we had an advisory group, and in that advisory committee were Democrats, Republicans, and non-affiliated voters. And we discussed districts at length, and after much discussion, so the first 3 ballot measures that we are doing, those were pretty easy to come to consensus. Those are straightforward. there wasn't too much to argue about any of those. Now, when we got to districts, we couldn't come up with a way that satisfied most of the people, because like the people, not politicians, they end up having the Secretary of State decide the random drawing. Well, that didn't work for the Republicans in the group, and that didn't, we just couldn't get that straightened out enough. In addition to that, that would have been four ballot measures, and 4 separate ones. So we really couldn't take that on. We were already doing a lot to do 3 at one time. So we had to let that go, knowing that the 3 that we have, like Bonnie said, they're an easy sell. They really, really work. Now, the other thing about that is having districts on this type of race could be limiting in the future. So what we're talking about earlier with ranked choice voting, if we make these changes, that they're very conducive to having ranked choice voting follow up at some point in the future. So that would be, if we had districts, that could be limiting. So it might be, well, you have to undo districts or something. So, if we wouldn't really need that as much if indeed ranked choice voting does well in Oregon. So that is still a possibility and can be handled either way in a different initiative than what we're doing right here.
Eleanor has her hand up. Go ahead, Eleanor.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Denise. It also makes a lot of sense that making the board go from 3 members to 5 members opens up the possibility of proportional representation, which I think is something that the league really loves for a commission. And I'm just wondering if the league's thought about how that could, whether that's also an easy path to transition from these proposed changes, if they're adopted, to proportional representation.
Well, since I guess that's a question to the league, I'll answer it. That's exactly why we don't support districts. You can't have proportional representation if you have single winner districts. And we would like to see proportional representation someday. So that is why we support not having districts for the county commission. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara.
Okay. Is there anybody else who has a question? Denise, this is so good and so helpful. I hope everybody that is here has either signed your petition or taken a petition, or will, even if they have signed, that they will get a petition and take it around for you, carry it to maybe 10 other signers or more, and that you meet your goal when you wanted to on that November 17th date. So that would be terrific. Was there any last thing that you wanted to say before we stopped? As I don't see other questions right now. Although there was somebody who mentioned something from Douglas County, just in case other people want to see that in the chat. I don't know if other people are seeing it, but in Douglas County, it said, whoops, sorry about that. Each candidate, I keep losing, okay, has its own nonpartisan candidate. So the May primary election results become the final outcome. And she says, to clarify, that's if a candidate gets 50% plus 1. And that, again, was in Douglas County. And I just wanted to share that. And I don't see any other questions. So Denise, did you want a final statement?
Yeah, I could give just a little bit of history of this, how we got to here. And I know that as far back as I know, so I said, like, this happened 170 years ago. It's pretty much been the same. But over 30 years ago, there was movement in this county to look at making these kind of changes over 30 years ago. And I know that it's been attempted a couple of times just to do the nonpartisan position change here, or started a couple of times here in Jackson County, but didn't get enough signatures to get on the ballot. But there have been commissioners who have run on this platform. Dave Gilmore back in 2002 ran, saying he was going to come in and cut the salaries and make some changes. When he got in, he got elected. He couldn't, get the other two commissioners to agree. And then the same with Al Dinsmore last year, running on this similar on actually pretty much the three that we are presenting. Again, if he would have gotten elected and didn't and still had two incumbents, it wouldn't get there. The current commissioners, they're not going to put this on the ballot for us. We would love for them to do that, but this kind of change is not going to happen from the top down. It's going to happen from the bottom up. And this is, while thank God we have opportunities to do it, it's a lot of work, it's heavy lift, but there's a lot of opportunity in it too. We're building community, we're building coalitions, we're educating voters. And so really it's a great opportunity to make democracy, serve us better. You're muted, Barbara.
You're muted.
I see. Thank you for all you do. And even though they had to jump off the other two speakers, I did want to thank our speakers tonight. They did a great job of condensing this. I know it seems very long and you're all tired, and I thank you for hanging in there. But it is important to know these things, and I think they did a terrific job. So I'm giving them a little clap here, even though we're gone. And we're going to stop recording. And I, once again, thank you all and wish you a good night.
Thank you, Barbara.